What to do, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review Jim Jones's second album. This album came out in late summer 2005, and it's called Harlem: Diary of a Summer. Now, basically, this wasn't Jim Jones's breakout album, but it was kind of like the album before the album because in 2006, Jim Jones really broke even with the single "We Fly High" and the album that was attached to that, Hustlers Pome. He kind of like secured like the Dirty South way of doing hit singles and the ringtone rap and that type stuff. We Fly High was like a large ringtone type single back in 2006, 2007. But prior to that, Jim Jones was kind of doing like some club oriented East Coast type rap, and that's kind of what happened with this project. I haven't listened to his 2004 album. Jim Jones's actual debut was On My Way to Church from the summer of 2004, and that one had Cameron on there and more Dipset members and that type of stuff. But this one is kind of a little bit more, not so much pop rap, but a little bit more commercial, not quite as hardcore, has a little bit more things going for it. And it was kind of like a minor taste of what would happen a year later with We Fly High, because Hustlers Pome, which had We Fly on there, had some pretty hooky songs on there. It definitely had more hits besides just We Fly High. There was like one with Cameron on there. There's just a bunch of them. Like there was Weatherman and stuff like that. But this actually does have a spare amount of songs on here. It's pretty interesting to kind of get some of these because I feel like it's just the strangest thing that this album came out in the summer of 2005 because it's just such a buoyant and kind of ahead of its time kind of project. The thing about it is, on top of that, is just being able to say that it really kind of, it's probably one of the more stylish albums to mess with back in 2005. Like, I definitely think that this was a little bit ahead of the times in a lot of ways. Like, it's kind of like messing with like Tech Nine back in like 1999 or something like that, or messing with Lil Wayne back in like 1999. Just some of those type folks messing with them way back. This was kind of, it's interesting to mess with like a rapper or musician like a year or two before their actual breakout album, because I feel like some folks can say that this, Jim Jones was always good and that type of stuff. And that's not necessarily solitarily true because this album is good, but it's not a classic. But it does have a number of boilers on here that can kind of credit Jim Jones that he did have a career going for himself before We Fly High and some of that type of stuff. And it's just interesting to kind of get that. So it's very much affiliated with the Dipset movement. If you didn't know about Jim Jones, he kind of refers to himself as the capo, which is kind of the guy behind the boards, where Cameron and Joel Santana were more the face of Dipset, but Jim Jones was kind of the capo and kind of more behind the scenes, at least in the early 2000s and stuff, but he started breaking even in the late 2000s, mid 2000s and stuff. So there were 3 singles from this project, and like I said, these did not crest extensively, but they are good singles. I definitely appreciate them, and it's pretty interesting just to kind of get this type concept, just because like so many albums, like when you think of like Lil Wayne's The Carter One or something like that, this is very similar approach, this kind of the album before the album. So the first single was Baby Girl, and this has Max B on there, and Max B was someone that French Montana and Jim Jones have talked about quite a bit. Max B is kind of serving like a 25, 30-year prison sentence, something like that. He's been in prison since like 2006, 2007. But this is a pretty good single. I definitely would have to say it's a real kind of hot summer, kind of boiling hot kind of summer type single. This has a nice, does have a club type feel towards it. I can appreciate this being kind of like a club song. This kind of has that tense energy and it's a little bit uptight. And I kind of like the concept of like Jim Jones is kind of nailing it. I can see this being a concert song. I can definitely see this as performable, like an easy kind of breadwinner for that. And a nice late summer kind of hot energy, hot weather kind of hit single and that type of stuff. Just definitely works for that sort of vibe. This real nice cut. Max B has a pretty good hook on here, so this works pretty well. I mean, it may not have like the bite and the ringtone readiness of like We Fly High, but it is a good single. I think it's serviceable. Summer with Miami is probably the better single, though. This is a great one. Trey Songz is on the hook, and this has a real up tempo and kind of quick kind of pace towards it. Definitely a glittery, kind of glitzy, glossy type single. This one's another one that feels just perfect for summer. Like you're cruising down the highway, going real fast, that type of stuff with the sunglasses on. It's a real kind of fast paced and uppity type single. I definitely appreciate the pace of it. these songs have a real nice nightlife affiliation. It's too bad that when we get to the complaints of this project, you'll see some of the problems I had with it. But yeah, 2 for 2 in the singles. What You've Been Drinking On is the third single, and this is kind of a posse track. Has Puff Daddy, Paul Wall, and a chick named Jaja on here. In addition to Jim Jones, all four of them spit verses, and this is a pretty crunchy club type song. This is definitely one where you do probably have some drinks in your system. It's just a slinky kind of little bit drugged up, a little bit sauced out kind of club type hit. Just kind of works. Not quite as glittery and as fast paced as Summer with Miami, but a little bit more comfortable and kind of enamored and kind of more emphatic than Baby Girl, where I feel like Baby Girl is kind of the one that just kind of lays it down and kind of gets like right to the tempo, this kind of in your face kind of put lays the Mac down right away. I feel like What You've Been Drinking On is a little bit more of a swaggering and kind of charismatic type song. Definite nice one. I mean, maybe the beat loop on What You've Been Drinking On may not be as immediate as Summer with Miami, but it is decent. It's definitely above average. I'd probably say it's like in the B range. Definitely something pretty solid and just overall a charmer. So that's definitely a good concept. It's a good kind of sauced up beat, but it's not like the best beat on the album. I think that's probably Summer with Miami, Baby Girl, and Honey Dip, and some of those. But yeah, so out of 15 songs, one is the Zeke. There's 16 songs on here, but one is the Zeke interlude, Freaky Zeke interlude, which is just a skit. So there's actually 7 songs out of 15 I recommend to you. So I'm going to recommend those 7 songs. So they would be Baby Girl, Summer with Miami, Honey Dip, I'm in Love with a Thug, What You've Been Drinking On, Jimmy, and We Just Ballin'. So to talk about the 4 songs apart from the singles, a real highlight and one of the better kind of radio potential, real commercial type songs on here is Honey Dip. Honey Dip is definitely a glossy kind of radio fashion type single that probably should have been a single over What You've Been Drinking On. I feel like this is just a real nice one, just a mellow and kind of mid-tempo, high mid-tempo, breezy kind of cruising around type summer song. Definitely works pretty damn well. Joel Santana and J.R. Ryder do a good job of accompanying Jim Jones on this song. It's a definite good one. Just pretty summer haze, just summer malaise, that type of stuff. Just caught in the summertime, just perfect for that kind of just hooky and kind of real popish, pop rapish, but not pop rapish, but kind of in a thuggish kind of tone in there. That's just a real highlight, I would have to say. And I'm in Love with a Thug is another one for the ladies that works pretty well. This is another up tempo kind of in the vehicle type. This is another up tempo kind of in the vehicle cruising around type song. Definitely works as like a mainstay highlight. Like Jim Jones really has some songs about being on the go and kind of out and about and moving around and kind of cruising about and stuff. There's just a lot of summery kind of got errands and shit to do type stuff that works pretty damn well. And I just would have to say that it's a good kind of concept where Honey Dip is a little bit more relaxed, but I feel like I'm in Love with a Thug has a little bit more of like I'm in Love with a Thug has a little bit more of ambition and kind of goals in mind for it. Not so much goals with the woman, but just kind of you got things on your mind and you got stuff that you want to do and that type of stuff. So it just kind of works in that sense. It's just kind of a busybody type song. And Jimmy is a real nice one. Like this one's kind of an acquired taste. I feel like Jimmy's kind of an acquired taste because I think some folks may not like the chipmunk sample that's kind of in the hook and stuff. But it's kind of a real neat and kind of eclectic, or it's kind of like a real neat and real kind of dark and sprawling kind of club type song that works pretty damn well. I definitely feel like as far as Jimmy kind of goes, it's a pretty leery and overall this imposing kind of club type song that works pretty well. I definitely can see this being like a haunting one. It's probably the most haunting song on the album, which is surprising because it just doesn't fit with the rest of the album's kind of more summery and kind of glitzy and glossier type tone in terms of stepping out. But it is a pretty nice club type song. I would have liked this. It's a little bit darker than We Fly High, but it can definitely be a highlight for like a more kind of at night and kind of just kind of not so much dance club type song, but just a more VIP and nightclub type song. So it's definitely one, but I do think it's an acquired taste. And then a real kind of nice one that's kind of a surprising album cut is We Just Ballin'. Like this is another one that has like a chick that can rap pretty well on here. Like Jaja from What You've Been Drinking On can rap pretty well, but TK, who TK, who I've never heard this chick before, but she's on We Just Ballin', and it has like a real uppity type beat. It really feels like you're kind of sauced on liquor and that type stuff. It's kind of like it has a quick pace, and maybe the beat can kind of get a little bit tiresome. I feel like it's not as good a beat as like Summer with Miami and I'm in Love with a Thug and Baby Girl and Honey Dip, but it is a nice one. I do definitely feel like We Just Ballin'. Like the beat loop just is a little bit brief, and it might grate on some folks' nerves, but I think it's good enough to the point where, especially if you're sauced up and have a lot of liquor in your system, you probably shouldn't notice. It's just a real song, like a crazy Friday, Saturday night, or Thursday night, something like that. Just kind of like the song says, just balling, kind of stepping out for the weekend, that type of stuff. It's another summer highlight and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of one of those, even if the beat can kind of mildly be maybe grating somewhat, but it's a nice one. So those 7 songs I recommend. And to talk about some of the songs I don't recommend, there is some Tupac kind of jacking on this project. Like I feel like Tupac Joint and My Diary both kind of have like there's some Tupac kind of vibes on here, but I kind of feel like it kind of works somewhat. It kind of works in like a context of some of this working for Tupac, but I felt like the Jim Jones songs where he kind of had his vibe going about it worked a little bit better, because I think the concept trying to bring back the thug life type vibes and the all eyes on me type vibes, but I think Jim Jones had a good concoction of what he was doing on his own that didn't really need that concept. But it is at least dope that Jim Jones likes Tupac and that type stuff. I feel like G's Up was kind of that one was kind of a really awkward beat on here. I don't know why that song. I was kind of expecting a song called G's Up to be a little bit more up tempo and more of like a carnivorous like club song or something like that, but it's really just a relaxed kind of down tempo song that just doesn't work that well. Joel Santana needed to be on this album more, but I kind of felt like Ride With Me was not a good example of that. That's another similar song to some of the Tupac stuff, kind of like My Diary and Tupac Joint. Just has a very similar beat to that, but I didn't really see that as too good of a riding song. Just felt more of like a, I don't know, just kind of that was a pedestrian kind of riding around song. Penitentiary Chances. Some of these on here just had some kind of awkward beats. I mean, some of these were kind of trying to bring the thuggish type side of things, but they just didn't come off as overly interesting. Where I know Jim Jones can do more of like the gritty and grimier type songs, but I wasn't seeing the example of that. I feel like the small amount of gloss that he had in some of these stepping out and club type songs and lady songs just worked a lot better, but songs like G's Up, Penitentiary Chances, Confront You Babe were just not really that stylish or emphatic or enjoyable. And yeah, that's just kind of the concept of most of it. So it's about a little bit over half the album that was not that well exceptional, but there's just a lot of these. To kind of reiterate, I feel like the best example of Jim Jones on this album is when he kind of makes some of these glitzy, kind of really car songs, cruising around with a nightlife, active nightlife with women in mind and that type of stuff, and some crunchy club type numbers, and a real kind of glossy and glitzy kind of nightlife sort of feeling where it's just about like, I mean, this is a prime example of a pretty emphatic weekend or a few months worth of weekends, depending upon how that goes. But I feel like it's only about a little bit less than half the album. And some of this, I mean, Jim Jones at least managed to polish off a bunch of these songs and prove that he has the songwriting potential. But on the other side of things, when it's not so much on the emphatic side of things, it's not quite as interesting. I feel like, you know, he takes a couple pages out of Tupac's playbook to try to flesh out some of these songs on here, but I feel like him pulling off the Tupac type vibes on his own needed some work, and that's just kind of the concept about it. But and I was also wondering, where's Cameron? Cameron notably took off this project. He did come back on Hustlers POME, but he wasn't on this one. But yeah, this is kind of the concept. So Joel's needed to be on here more. Definitely another song like Honey Dip. I felt like Joel Santana had a great verse on Honey Dip. He almost stole the show on that one. It's a good example of Joel's doing well on there. So, but yeah, I'm going to give this album me liking 7 songs out of 15. Me liking 7 songs out of 15, that's basically half. So I'm going to give this album a 5.5 out of 10. I feel like it's a little bit above average. It's basically yeah, it's a hair or two above average, but it just needed more of like the moments like Honey Dip and Summer with Miami and I'm in Love with the Thug and Baby Girl and some of those. I mean, I definitely feel like Jim Jones has some great serenades for the ladies and stepping out and kind of cruising around type moments, but it kind of was just it's just undercooked. I think that's kind of the concept. It's just kind of undercooked because I like the concept of Jim Jones being able to do this, but yeah, it's either kind of the fact that it needed more hits like these club cuts, or it needed to flesh out more strengths in like other sides of the the aisle and that type of stuff. So this is kind of the concept. But for what it is, this is a good taste. There's definitely 7 good hits on here, has some good highlights, and it's just an extra score of things before he broke even and hit mainstream like the next year, just for him to be able to have that kind of stuff and be able to do it. So it's pretty quality, just the fact that he was dropping hits like this and being able to, and in some cases doing great, just having some real kind of breathing new life into East Coast hip hop and that type stuff. So the social score I'm gonna give like a 7.5 out of 10, because I feel like a lot of these are pretty good. All 3 of the singles are really glitzy, and there's 4 other songs that really have some good nightlife. And I would probably throw Ride With Me in there, even though I didn't enjoy that song. There's just a lot of songs on here that do have like a pretty effectual kind of stepping out. There's just a good chunk of songs on here that have some pretty effectual stepping out type vibes. Like Tupac Joint is another one, despite the fact that that kind of is a beat jack. So that's just kind of the concept about it. There are more than half the album of glitzy stepping out type moments, some club moments, some ladies moments, some car moments, some flossing moments, just some drinking moments. Overall, he has a good sense of nightlife and stuff. It's a good social type vibe. So I definitely appreciate that. 7.5 out of 10 social. And in terms of the future, like Jim Jones is got some stuff going. I know he's working on some stuff, and he's dropped several albums that I'm going to start messing with more. It's going to be kind of interesting to get to some of those. But yeah, I'm just going to have to mess with some of these. I'm definitely going to review the one with We Fly High on there, but that's just some stuff coming.